Welcome back to the 1% Mind. In our previous sessions, we optimized your biological baseline and your financial psychology. Today, we cross into the final stage of this journey, Phase 3, the mastery of sovereignty. Imagine it's Tuesday, 6:30 a.m. Before taking a single conscious breath, you reach over to your nightstand and pick up a glowing piece of glass. You open a news aggregator. Immediately, your brain is hit with a curated stream of catastrophe. You see reports on economic instability, political violence, and the threat of industry-wide automation. You are scrolling through a timeline of collective outrage. Within 90 seconds, your heart rate accelerates, your cortisol levels spike, your amygdala, the brain's primal threat detection center, signals that you are in imminent danger. You may feel like an informed citizen, but you are actually a reactionary node. You have allowed an algorithm to outsource your focus and your potential to a system designed to harvest your attention for profit. The middle class assumes that the primary goal of media and social platforms is to educate the public. In reality, these are corporations driven by a single metric for survival: attention. They must capture your time and sell it to advertisers. They achieve this by exploiting negativity bias. Evolution has trained the human brain to prioritize threats over positive information. On the savannah, ignoring a beautiful flower was completely irrelevant, but ignoring a hidden lion in the bushes was a fatal mistake. Modern media weaponizes this glitch. If they report that the economy is stable, you click away. If they frame a minor market shift as a total collapse, you stay glued to the screen, generating revenue while your cognitive bandwidth is destroyed. Engaging with the 24-hour news cycle plugs your nervous system into an industrialized outrage machine. It allows external corporations to dictate your emotional state, effectively stripping you of your sovereignty. Consider a software engineer who watches the news and becomes convinced a recession is inevitable. Paralyzed by the narrative of macroeconomic collapse, they see images like this, desperation and loss, as their own future. This artificially induced fear stifles their ambition. They choose to stay in a stagnant corporate role rather than launching their startup, sacrificing their future to a pundit whose job is to generate panic. The masses consume asymmetric information diet, the same headlines and tweets as everyone else. If you use the same inputs as the herd, you will produce the same mediocre results. The 1% prioritize asymmetric information. They treat data like fuel, seeking out raw, high-friction, single-ingredient sources, rather than processed mass-market narratives. They apply the Lindy effect, which suggests that the longer a non-perishable idea has survived, the longer it is likely to remain useful. A book that has provided value for hundreds of years, like the works of Marcus Aurelius, is likely to be valuable for hundreds more. Contrast that against an algorithmically curated tweet, which is fleeting and irrelevant within hours. The elite skip the pundits and go directly to the source. They read raw SEC filings and unfiltered data, removing the interpretation that the media provides. By filtering out mass-market noise, you create the cognitive space required to identify high-value opportunities that the distracted crowd will always miss. True sovereignty also requires detaching from the psychological pressure of the group. From childhood, we are trained in the permission protocol. We learn to wait for grades, degrees, and corporate approvals to validate our worth and our next move. When you step outside these lines, the herd reacts with pushback. They will call you irresponsible or project their own insecurities onto your vision to shame you back into conformity. The sovereign individual adopts the agency protocol. They don't wait for a green light. They choose themselves. They build their systems in silence, ignoring the need for external validation. This independence is driven by a shift in how you interpret the world, your locus of control. And 99% have an external locus of control. When they fail, they point outward, blaming the economy, managers, or circumstances. This absolves blame, but makes them powerless. The 1% maintain an internal locus of control, taking absolute ownership of every variable in their environment. If a business fails during a recession, they don't blame the market. They analyze why their model wasn't robust enough to survive the stress test. This level of responsibility is difficult because it removes all excuses. However, when you accept that you are the primary driver of your outcomes, you gain the direct leverage required to force the results you want. You're no longer a passenger in your own life. You're the one setting the course. To fully reclaim your sovereignty and permanently shift your locus of control, you must execute the 3-step sovereignty protocol today. Protocol 1 is the Algorithmic Guillotine. This is a permanent restructuring of your information environment. Delete every news aggregator on your phone. Ruthlessly unfollow any source that profits from your outrage or anxiety. You will not miss important events. Truly significant data will always find you. Replace the feed with high-friction books and domain-specific analysis that requires deep focus. Protocol 2 is the echo chamber exit. Surrounding yourself with only agreeing voices makes your thinking completely soft and fragile. Actively seek out the most intelligent arguments that contradict your beliefs. If you are convinced a certain technology is the future, find the smartest person who disagrees and study their thesis until you can argue it as well as they can. Separating your identity from your opinions gives you a major advantage. You can pivot instantly when the data changes, while the crowd stays tethered to a failing idea out of pride. Protocol 3 is the unapologetic agency execution. Look closely for any area where you are currently waiting for a certificate or an approval to finally move forward. Where are you telling yourself a story that you can't act because you lack a credential or permission from an authority? Execute agency by launching. Use raw self-education. Build a project and put it in the market. Let the uncompromising physics of the system be the only judge of your success. Training your nervous system to operate without a safety net is the only way to achieve complete self-reliance. Most people live in a structured cage, consuming fear and seeking the approval of the crowd. The 1% realize the door is unlocked, and they boldly step out into the true independence of their own creation. You have a choice today. You can remain a reactionary node, vibrating constantly with the endless anxiety of the masses, or you can claim your right to build your own systems in the silence. In our next video, we reach the conclusion of this masterclass, the wealth architecture. We will synthesize biology, capital, and sovereignty into a single integrated map of reality. Like this video to signal that you are an independent thinker. Subscribe to the 1% Mind and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Stop reacting to the noise of the matrix. Start building your own independent reality.